My dad called me useless in front of everyone, and I just smiled. He did not know he was standing in a house paid for with my money. They mocked my old car and worn coat, never realizing I was the reason their lights stayed on and their credit cards never declined. Then I did one thing that silenced them all in exactly one morning. Before we begin, where are you listening from, and what time is it? My name is Adeline Marlowe. I am 32 years old, and if you asked my family to describe me in one word, they would not say diligent, or generous, or even kind. They would say broke. They would say I am the financial dead weight of the Marlowe dynasty, the black sheep who drives a sedan from 2015 and wears coats that went out of style 3 seasons ago. They would tell you that I live in a tiny, bare apartment in Port Mason because I cannot afford anything better, and that my refusal to join their lavish vacations is born from a lack of funds rather than a lack of desire. For a decade, I have let them hold on to that narrative. I have let them wear it like a shield, protecting their fragile egos from the cold, hard truth of their own incompetence. But tonight, the shield cracked. It started with a phone call at 7:30 in the evening, outside my window. The rain of Port Mason was hammering against the glass, blurring the city lights into streaks of gray and gold. Inside, my apartment was silent. It is a silence I paid for dearly, a minimalist sanctuary of white walls and mid-century furniture that I keep sparse not because I am poor, but because I detest clutter. When my phone vibrated against the marble coaster on my coffee table, the name Frank Marlowe flashed across the screen. My father. I stared at it for a moment, listening to the rain. Before I picked up, I did not even get a chance to say hello. Adeline, are you incapable of checking your email? Or are you just ignoring us because you know you cannot contribute? His voice was not a shout. It was worse. It was that low, disappointed rumble he reserves for when he wants to make you feel small. It was the voice of a patriarch who believes he is the sun, and everyone else is merely a planet lucky enough to orbit him. I took a sip of my tea. Earl Grey, hot. I checked it this morning. Dad, I said calmly. Then you saw the invite for the anniversary dinner. He snapped. Blair said you declined. Again. Look, if you are broke, just say you are broke. Do not make scheduling conflicts. It is embarrassing. Adeline, we are trying to take a nice family photo for the newsletter, and having to explain why our youngest daughter is missing again makes us look bad. If you are poor, fine. Just do not get in the way of those of us who actually have lives to live. He hung up, just like that. The line went dead, leaving the echo of his insults hanging in the cool air of my living room. Broke, poor, embarrassing. I set my phone down on the table, careful not to let it slam. I have trained myself over the years to react to their venom with the stillness of a statue. If I react, they win. If I scream, I become the dramatic, unstable daughter they love to gossip about. So I sat there, feeling the heat rise in my chest, not from shame, but from a burning, cold indignation. A moment later, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a notification from the family group chat, the family circle. My mother had named it, adding a heart emoji that felt like a slap in the face every time I saw it. I picked up the phone and swiped open the message. It was a photo from my sister, Blair. The caption read, "Simply blessed." The image was a study in performing wealth. It was taken at the Golden Oak, the most expensive steakhouse in our hometown. The angle was deliberate, framing the shot to include the crystal chandelier hanging above their table and the heavy velvet curtains in the background. My mother, Janine, was smiling with her teeth whitened to an unnatural brightness, holding a glass of Cabernet that I knew cost $25 a pour. My father, Frank, looked regal in his navy blazer, the very picture of a successful provider. And Blair was front and center, wearing a sequined dress that caught the light, looking every inch the golden child. The table was set like a showroom, linen napkins folded into swans, silverware polished to a mirror shine, a bottle of vintage wine chilling in a silver bucket. It was a beautiful picture. It screamed success. It screamed stability. It screamed that the Marlows were people of substance and taste. I looked at that photo, and then I switched apps. I opened my banking application. Face ID scanned my features, and the numbers populated the screen. I did not look at my savings balance, which was healthy and growing. I looked at the checking account I had designated for external transfers. Pending transaction. The Golden Oak, $342. Pending transaction Uber, Black, $58. Pending transaction Blair's Auto Finance, $612. I scrolled down, my thumb moving rhythmically over the glass. Yesterday, Northside Electric Utility, $215. That was for my parents' house, the sprawling colonial they claimed to own outright, but actually refinanced 3 times. 2 days ago, State Farm Insurance, $180. That was for my father's truck, the one he claimed he bought with a bonus from a consulting gig that never existed. 3 days ago, Visa signature payment, minimum due, $400. That was the credit card my mother used to buy the very dress she was wearing in the photo Blair had just posted. The list went on. It was a digital paper trail of their lies. For 5 years, I have been the invisible infrastructure of their lives. I have been the one ensuring the lights stay on so they can see to take their selfies. I have been the one making the car payments so they can drive to parties where they brag about their success. I have been the safety net they treat like a doormat. They call it a magic trick, though they never use those words. They live a lifestyle of champagne and caviar, funded by a daughter they treat like bread and water. They have convinced themselves that the money just appears, or perhaps, in their twisted logic, they believe they deserve it so much that the universe provides it. They do not want to know the mechanics. They do not want to acknowledge that every time their card is approved at a register, it is because I transferred funds 10 minutes prior to cover the overdraft. I am the ghost in their machine, and ghosts are supposed to be silent. I looked back at the photo in the group chat. My father's face, smug and self-satisfied, stared back at me. If you are poor, stay out of the way. The words replayed in my mind, looping like a broken record. He was standing in a suit I paid to have dry cleaned, eating a steak I paid to have cooked, drinking wine I paid to have poured, and he had the audacity to call me worthless. He did not know. None of them knew. They thought I was scraping by in Port Mason, working a dead-end administrative job. They did not know about my promotion to Director of Operations at Stonewick Compliance Solutions. They did not know my salary had tripled in the last 4 years. They did not know that the only reason I lived simply was because I was funneling 40% of my income into maintaining their delusions of grandeur. Why did I do it? That is the question everyone asks. Why pay for people who spit on you? Guilt is a powerful drug. Duty is an even stronger chain. Since I was 22, they programmed me to believe that family supports family, but they revised the definition. In the Marlowe Dictionary, family supports family means Adeline supports everyone else, and everyone else critiques Adeline. I stood up and walked to my kitchen island. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the stark, clean lines of my apartment. I navigated to my email drafts. There was a folder I had created 6 months ago. It was just a place to vent, a place to type out the angry letters I never intended to send. The top draft was titled, "Stop Asking Me for Money." It was a weak title. It was the title of a victim. It was the title of a daughter who was begging for permission to exist. I clicked on the subject line. I highlighted the text. I hit backspace. I typed a new subject line. Invoice, reimbursement for living expenses. Fiscal years, 2018 to present. The cursor blinked at the end of the line. It looked aggressive. It looked official. It looked like the end of the world as they knew it. I leaned back in my chair, the ergonomic mesh supporting my spine. I was not shaking. My heart was not racing. In fact, for the first time in years, my pulse felt steady. A strange, cold calm had settled over me. It was the calm of a surgeon picking up a scalpel. It was the calm of an executioner checking the rope. I looked at the group chat one last time. Blair had added another comment. Wish Adeline could be here, but we know how hard it is for her to keep up. Crying face emoji. I did not type a reply. I did not engage. I simply closed the messaging app and turned my attention back to the spreadsheet I had open on my second monitor. I do not plan revenge by screaming. Screaming is messy. Screaming is emotional. Screaming allows them to call you hysterical. I do not want to be the hysterical daughter. I want to be a terrifying reality check. I am going to get revenge with receipts. I am going to get revenge with timestamps. I am going to get revenge with PDF attachments and bank statements and notarized logs of every single time they called me worthless while spending my dime. My father asked me not to get in the way. He asked me not to be a burden. He thinks my absence is the problem. He thinks my poverty is the stain on the family name. He has no idea. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was now 8:15 in the evening. The dinner at the Golden Oak would be winding down soon. The waiter would bring the check. My father would make a show of reaching for his wallet. Knowing full well that the card inside was linked to a joint account he thinks still has a lingering balance from a sale he made in 1999. He will hand it over with a flourish. The waiter will run it. The machine will beep. And for the first time in 5 years, it will go through not because of magic, but because I am allowing it one last time. I am letting them have this one last supper, because tomorrow morning, at 9 or 3, everything changes. They do not know that I am not just stopping the payments. That would be too easy. That would just make them victims of circumstance. No, I am doing something far more permanent. I am compiling a record so complete, so undeniable, that when the lights go out and the cars get repossessed, they will not be able to spin a story about bad luck or a difficult economy. I am going to make sure that everyone they know, everyone they have bragged to, everyone they have impressed with their stolen lifestyle, knows exactly who paid for the ticket. I clicked on the body of the email. My fingers hovered over the keys. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain and expensive tea. You are listening to Adeline Marlowe, and if you are sitting comfortably, I suggest you stay there, because what I am about to do is going to burn a house down, and I want you to have the best seat in the house. This is not a story about a girl who ran away. This is a story about the girl who stayed, paid the bills, and then presented the check. Are you ready to see the math? Because the numbers do not lie, even if my father does. To understand why I'm sitting here with a spreadsheet capable of destroying my family, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand that I did not wake up one morning and decide to be vindictive. Revenge is not a mood. It is a reaction to a prolonged state of siege. For me, the siege began 10 years ago, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Specifically, the whimpering of my mother on the other end of a landline. I was 22 years old. I had just landed my first real job as an administrative assistant at a logistics firm. The pay was meager, barely enough to cover the rent of my studio apartment, which smelled permanently of boiled cabbage and damp drywall. But I was proud. I was independent. I had managed to save exactly $2,500 in an emergency fund. It felt like a fortune. It felt like a shield against the world. Then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday night. I was eating instant noodles, the kind that cost 30 cents a pack, watching a sitcom on a laptop that overheated if I played video for more than an hour, when I answered. My mother, Janine, was hyperventilating. She was not crying. She was panicking. She told me there had been a mix-up at the bank. That was her favorite phrase. A mix-up. As if the bank tellers had accidentally shuffled the mortgage papers like a deck of cards. She said they were 2 months behind on the house payments, and if they did not come up with the cash by Friday, the bank would start pre-foreclosure proceedings. I remember the cold knot that formed in my stomach. The house on Maple Row was not just a building, it was the stage upon which the Marlowes performed their play of success. Losing it would mean the audience would go home. "Mom," I said, clutching the phone, "how much is it?" She named a figure, $2,480. It was almost exactly what I had in my savings account. It was every penny I had scraped together by skipping lunches and walking to work instead of taking the bus. I hesitated. I knew I should say no. I knew this was not my burden, but then she hit me with the line that would become the anthem of my 20s. We are a family, Adeline. Families hold each other up. If we lose the house, where will we go? Where will you come for Christmas? The guilt was instantaneous and crushing. I felt selfish for even hesitating. So, I did it. I walked to the bank the next morning on my lunch break. I filled out a wire transfer form. I watched the teller type in the numbers, and I watched my balance drop from 4 figures to 2. I had $20 left to my name until payday, which was 10 days away. I walked out of the bank feeling a strange mix of terror and pride. I had saved the day. I was the hero. I waited for the call, the text, the acknowledgement that I had done something significant. It never came. Instead, 2 days later, I saw a post on my mother's Facebook page. It was a photo of the front porch of the house, the afternoon sun hitting the hanging baskets of petunias. The caption read, "So grateful for this beautiful home and the blessings that keep us here. God is good, blessed." There was no mention of Adeline. There was no mention of the daughter who was currently eating plain toast for dinner because she could not afford cheese. God had provided the money, or perhaps, in her mind, the money had simply materialized because she deserved it. That was the first crack in my foundation. Though I did not see it then. I told myself she was just being private. I told myself it did not matter who got the credit, as long as the family was safe. A year later, the task got bigger, and this time, it was not a request for cash. It was a request for a signature. My sister, Blair, wanted a new car, not a used sedan like the one I was driving, which rattled every time I went over 40 miles per hour. No, Blair needed a brand new SUV. She had just started a job in real estate, a career that lasted all of 3 months, and she insisted she needed a luxury vehicle to impress clients. We were at the dealership. The air smelled of floor wax and new leather. My father, Frank, was there, pacing the showroom floor like he owned the place. He had his arm around Blair's shoulder. They looked like a team. I stood off to the side, clutching my purse. The finance manager, a man with a shiny suit and a smile that did not reach his eyes, explained the problem. Blair had no credit history. She needed a cosigner. Frank turned to me. "Adeline, you have steady income. You have that office job." "Dad, I cannot afford a car payment," I said, my voice shaking. "I am barely making rent." He laughed, a big, booming laugh that made the other customers look over. "Oh, honey, nobody is asking you to pay. This is just paperwork. It is just for the file. Blair is going to make the payments. She is going to be raking in commissions. We just need your name on the line to get the interest rate down. It is a technicality." Blair looked at me with big, wet eyes. "Please, Addie, I need this to start my career. Do not be the reason I fail before I even start." "Just paperwork, just a technicality." I signed my name on the electronic pad, and with every loop of the stylus, I was signing away my future freedom. For the first 3 months, everything was fine. Blair drove her shiny black SUV, posting pictures of the steering wheel logo on Instagram. Then, the 4th month came. I checked my bank account to pay my electric bill, and I saw it. A withdrawal. $612. My account was overdrawn. I called Blair in a panic. She did not answer. I called my father. He sounded annoyed, as if I had interrupted a very important meeting. "Blair is having a slow month. Adeline," he said, dismissing my panic. "The market is tough. The bank just pulled from the backup account. It is fine. She will pay you back when she closes her first deal. Relax. You are making a mountain out of a molehill." She never paid me back, and she never closed a deal. She quit real estate 2 months later because the hours were too long. But she kept the car, and I kept paying for it. Every month, like clockwork, that $612 left my account. It became a part of my budget, a tumor I could not remove. I had to take a second job waiting tables on weekends just to cover it. I was working 7 days a week, sleeping 5 hours a night, and wearing clothes I bought from thrift stores. Meanwhile, the Marlows continued to shine. The breaking point of my sanity, The moment the sadness turned into a cold, hard resolve happened at a Sunday dinner about 3 years into this arrangement. By then, I was paying the car note, partially covering my mother's credit card minimums, and occasionally paying their utility bills when the disconnect notices turned pink. We were sitting around the dining table. It was a roast beef dinner. The house smelled of rosemary and garlic. I was wearing a sweater I had owned since college, the cuffs fraying slightly. Blair was wearing a new cashmere cardigan. My father was holding court at the head of the table, carving the beef with a violent enthusiasm. He was talking about money. It was his favorite subject, ironically enough for a man who was terrible at managing it. "The problem with young people today," he said, gesturing with the carving knife, "is that they have a scarcity mindset. They are afraid to spend. You have to spend money to make money. You have to project success. Look at Adeline." I froze. I had been trying to make myself invisible, focusing on pushing peas around my plate. He pointed the knife at me. "Look at her. She works all the time. But what does she have to show for it? She drives a beater. She dresses like a librarian. She is afraid to enjoy life. If you are good at making money, you should know how to enjoy it. That is the secret. Adeline acts like she is broke because she thinks broke." The table went silent. Blair let out a small, polite giggle. I looked at him. I looked at the man whose truck insurance I had paid 2 weeks prior, so he would not get a ticket. I looked at my mother, who was wearing earrings I knew she charged to a card I was paying off. I looked at Blair, who had arrived in the SUV that was ruining my credit score. They were eating the food, they were drinking the wine, and they were looking at me with pity. They truly believed their own lie. They believed that I was the failure. They believed that my lack of luxury was a character flaw, not a mathematical necessity caused by their greed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to pull out my phone and show them the bank transfers. But I knew what would happen. They would call me dramatic. They would say I was keeping score. They would say I was holding grudges. They would turn the victimhood around so fast my head would spin. So I did something else. I swallowed the rage. It tasted like bile. "I am just saving up." "Dad," I said quietly. My voice did not shake. That night, when I got back to my apartment, I did not cry. I sat down at my cheap laminate desk and I opened a fresh notebook. It was a simple spiral-bound one, costing 99 cents. I picked up a black pen and I wrote the date at the top of the first page. October 14th, 2016, Sunday dinner, item roast beef and wine, cost paid by Dad's credit card, primary account holder, Adeline Marlowe. Insult called me broke and said I have a scarcity mindset. Then I went back. I went through my bank statements for the last 3 years. I wrote down every single transaction. August 3rd, Blair's car payment, $612. September 1st, Mom's utility bill, $200. Christmas Eve, emergency plumbing repair for Dad's house, $450. I filled 10 pages that night. I wrote down the date, the amount, the reason, and who asked for it. I documented the lies. I documented the gratitude that never came. Over the years, the notebook became a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet became a detailed financial dossier. I stopped looking at the payments as help. I started looking at them as data points. I realized something profound that night, something that changed the way I looked at them forever. I used to think I was the safety net. I used to think I was the good daughter keeping the family from falling into the abyss. I was wrong. I was not keeping them from falling. I was paying for the stage lights so they could keep performing. I was not saving them from poverty. I was subsidizing their delusion. I was purchasing their ability to look down on me. Every dollar I sent was a ticket I bought for them to sit in the front row and mock my shoes. And as I closed that notebook, I made a silent vow. I would keep paying. I would keep the lights on. I would keep the car running. Not because I loved them, and not because I was weak, but because I wanted the ledger to be long. I wanted the debt to be so high, so insurmountable, that when I finally called it in, it would bury them. I became a spy in my own family. I nodded when they gave me advice. I smiled when they criticized my lifestyle. and every time they swiped a card, I mentally added a row to the spreadsheet. They thought they were raising a doormat. They did not know they were raising an auditor, and the audit was finally coming due. The fuse that eventually blew up the Marlowe family dinner was lit exactly 7 days before we sat down at that table. It did not start with a scream or a dramatic confrontation. It started, as most disasters in my life do, with a notification on my phone. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my office at Stonewick Compliance Solutions, reviewing a stack of audit reports. My phone sat face up on the desk, silent but demanding attention. When the screen lit up, I saw my sister's name, Blair. The message began with a string of party popper emojis. Big news. Guys, Ryan and I are finally going to upgrade. We are looking at the new Land Rover. The dealership has one in white with a tan interior. It is literally my dream car. Plus, we are thinking of celebrating with a week in Turks and Caicos next month. We deserve a reset, do we not? I stared at the message. My stomach did not flutter with excitement for her. It tightened with a familiar dread. Blair does not announce purchases for the sake of sharing joy. She announces them to gauge logistics. Then came the follow-up text, the one I knew was coming before the typing bubble even appeared. Addie, babe, I might need a tiny favor. The financing guy is being super annoying about my debt-to-income ratio. Apparently, they do not count Ryan's freelance projections as real income. Eye roll emoji. I just need a cosigner to lock in the interest rate. It is literally just a formality. You know I am good for it. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. The audacity was breathtaking. I was still paying off the last car she claimed she was good for, the one she traded in at a loss 2 years ago without telling me. Leaving me to service the negative equity, now she wanted to attach my name to a luxury vehicle that cost more than my annual salary during my first 3 years of working. I typed a reply. My fingers heavy. Blair, I cannot do that. My credit is already tied up. I did not send it. Before I could hit the arrow, my father entered the chat. Frank Marlowe, just sign the papers. Adeline, do not be difficult. Your sister has worked hard this year. She deserves this win. I stared at the screen, incredulous. Worked hard. Blair worked part-time as a social media coordinator for a boutique that was owned by a friend of a friend, a job she took mostly for the employee discount. I deleted my draft and typed again. Dad, it is a liability. I am looking to buy my own place eventually. I cannot have another car loan on my report. The response from my father came so quickly he must have been holding the phone, waiting to pounce. Frank Marlowe, this is how families work. Adeline, we help each other rise. If you sign, it proves you are actually part of this team. If you do not, well, it just proves what I have always said. You are useless unless you are forced to be helpful. Signing is the only way to prove you have any value to us right now. The words hung there on the glowing screen. Useless. Value. It was a transaction. He was not even hiding it anymore. My worth as a daughter was directly calculated by my credit score and my willingness to lend it out. He was dangling my membership in the family like a carrot. The cost of admission was a signature on a $60,000 liability. I put the phone down. I did not reply. I could not. But something shifted in my chest. It was not the usual hurt. It was something sharper. It was suspicious. I spun my chair around and looked out the window at the Port Mason skyline. A question formed in my mind, one that should have been obvious years ago but had been obscured by the fog of emotional manipulation. If they are so successful, if Dad's consulting business is booming and Mom is blessed, why is their credit always garbage? Rich people leverage debt, yes, but rich people, truly solvent people, do not need their estranged, broke daughter to co-sign for a car. They do not need to juggle utility bills. I felt a sudden, frantic need to see the truth. Not the truth they posted on Instagram, but the paper truth. I remembered a box I had in my closet. It was a plastic bin filled with miscellaneous papers I had inadvertently swept up the last time I visited their house to help clean out the garage. Mom had told me to just toss everything, but being an archivist by nature, I had thrown it all into a box to shred later. That was 6 months ago. I had never shredded it. I left work early. I drove home in silence, my heart hammering against my ribs, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a detective closing in on a lead. When I got to my apartment, I pulled the bin down from the top shelf. I dumped the contents onto my living room rug. It was mostly junk mail, flyers for pizza, pre-approved credit card offers for my dad that had likely been rejected upon application, catalogs for expensive furniture. I sifted through the pile, my hands moving fast. Then I stopped. Sandwiched between a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon and a local political flyer was an envelope. It had already been opened. The flap jagged where someone had ripped it. The return address was for a company called Summit Horizon Financial. That was not a bank I recognized. It sounded like one of those subprime lenders, the kind that advertises on daytime television with promises of quick cash and no credit checks. But what stopped my heart was the addressee. It was addressed to Adeline Marlowe. But the address below my name was not my apartment in Port Mason. It was my parents' house on Maple Row. I picked up the envelope. My hands were trembling slightly. I pulled out the letter inside. It was a notice of rate adjustment. Dear Ms. Marlowe, this letter is to inform you that the promotional interest rate on your personal line of credit ending in 4492 is set to expire on November 1st, 2023. The new variable APR will be 24.9%. I read it twice, then a third time. I did not have a personal line of credit with Summit Horizon Financial. I had never heard of Summit Horizon Financial. I dropped the letter and grabbed my laptop. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the debris of their chaotic lives, and I logged into the credit monitoring service I used. I usually only checked my score, which was excellent thanks to my obsessive management. I rarely looked at the detailed report of open accounts because I knew what I had, or I thought I did. I requested the full report. The little loading circle spun for what felt like an hour. When the PDF finally loaded, I scrolled past my student loans. I scrolled past my own credit card. I scrolled past the car loan I was paying for Blair. And there it was. Account name Summit, Horizon Financial. Date opened, February 14th, 2021. Original balance, $15,000. Current balance, $14,210. Status current. Minimum payments made. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I closed my eyes, searching my memory. Where was I on Valentine's Day 2 years ago? I was single. I was working. I was definitely not opening a high-interest line of credit. But I remembered where they were. Mom and Dad had gone on a romantic getaway to a resort in Scottsdale. They had posted photos of champagne and spa treatments. They had captioned it, "Treating ourselves because we earned it." They had not earned it. I bought it, and I did not even know I was paying. Someone had used my social security number. Someone had forged my digital signature. And judging by the fact that the statements were going to their house, they had been intercepting the mail to keep me from finding out. This was not borrowing. This was not family helping family. This was identity theft. This was a felony. I sat there for a long time. The sun went down, casting long shadows across my living room. I felt cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold that no heater could fix. I needed to be sure. I needed to hear the lie before I revealed the truth. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, sweetie, did you see Blair's news? Is it not exciting?" Her voice was light, airy, completely unburdened by conscience. "I saw it," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Mom, I have a weird question. I was looking through some old papers, and I found a letter from a place called Summit Horizon. It was addressed to me, but sent to your house." There was a pause, a silence that lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. "Summit what?" she asked. The pitch of her voice went up half an octave. "I have never heard of that. You probably just got some junk mail. Adeline, you know how they sell mailing lists." "It was not junk mail, Mom. It was a rate adjustment notice for an open account, a $15,000 account." I heard the sound of cabinet doors closing in the background. She was nervous. "Oh, Adeline, Do not be so dramatic, she snapped, her tone shifting from confused to aggressive instantly. Maybe your father opened something in your name for tax purposes, or to help your credit score. You know how complex his finances are. He is always moving things around to optimize our portfolio. Optimize your portfolio with my social security number without asking me. Stop it, she hissed. Stop sounding so accusatory. We raised you. We fed you. If your father needed to use a little leverage to keep the family afloat during a hard quarter, you should be grateful he is smart enough to manage it. It is probably paid off by now anyway. Why are you digging for dirt? Why can you not just be happy for your sister instead of trying to find reasons to attack us? She did not deny it. She justified it. It has not paid off. Mom, it is maxed out. I am not doing this with you, she said. I have a headache. You are always so negative. This is why Blair does not like asking you for things. You make everything feel like a transaction. She hung up on me. I sat with the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone. Make everything feel like a transaction. The irony was so sharp it almost cut my skin. They had turned my entire existence into a transaction. I was not a daughter. I was a credit mule. I was a resource to be mined until I was dry. They had stolen my identity to pay for their spa days. They were currently trying to bully me into signing for a Land Rover while hiding a $15,000 secret debt they had saddled me with. I stood up. The sadness was gone. The confusion was gone. Even the anger, the hot, fiery kind, had evaporated. What was left was something much colder. It was the icy clarity of a judge passing a sentence. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I walked over to my desk and sat down at my computer. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it Invoice. I logged into my bank account. I downloaded the history for the last 5 years. I dragged the PDF into the folder. I logged into the credit monitoring site. I downloaded the full report with the fraudulent Summit Horizon account highlighted. I dragged it into the folder. I scanned the letter I had found in the trash, dragged it into the folder. I went through my emails, finding every urgent request, every "I will pay you back next week" message, every guilt-tripping monologue from my father. I took screenshots. I dragged them into the folder. I worked for hours. I was building a case. I was constructing a mirror so high and so wide that they would not be able to look away from their own reflection. They wanted to call me worthless fine. I would show them exactly what I was worth, down to the penny. They wanted to say I did not contribute fine. I would show them that I was the only reason they were not living in a rental apartment. They wanted to play games with money. I was about to show them that while they were playing checkers, I had been learning to play chess. I looked at the folder on my screen. It was growing. It was heavy with digital evidence. I opened a blank spreadsheet. I typed the first column header date, the second amount, the third excuse given, the fourth reality. I cracked my knuckles. It was time to balance the books. The dinner was in 1 week. That was 7 days. 7 days to finalize the account. 7 days to let them think they were safe. I picked up my phone and sent one text to the family group chat. I will be at the anniversary dinner. And Dad, you are right. We should talk about my contribution to this family. I hit send. Let them think I had surrendered. Let them think I was coming to sign the papers for the Land Rover. They had no idea that I was coming to foreclose on their lies. The glow of my monitor was the only light in the room. It was cool, blue, and clinical, reflecting off the lenses of my glasses as I stared at the blank email draft. For years, I had been the silent partner in the business of keeping the Marlowe family appearing successful. I had been the backstage crew making sure the actors had their props and their costumes. But tonight, the stage manager was walking out, and I was leaving the lights on just long enough to show the audience the rot behind the curtain. I did not start with "Dear Mom and Dad." I did not start with an emotional plea for understanding. I started with a header, bold and centered, in size 14 Arial font. Invoice for unreimbursed living expenses. Fiscal period, 2018 to present. I had organized the body of the email not as a letter, but as a line-item billing statement. I wanted it to look like the professional documents I handled every day at Stonewick Compliance Solutions. I wanted it to look undeniable. I began with Category 1 housing. I typed out the date December 12th, 2022. I typed the amount $2,450. I typed the transaction code, direct wire transfer to Chase Mortgage Servicing. Then, in the notes section, I wrote the sentence that cut through the noise. Prevention of foreclosure proceedings initiated due to 90-day delinquency. You sleep in this house. I secured the roof. I added the next entry, July 1st, 2023. Amount $800. Note property tax supplemental payment. You claimed the check was lost in the mail. The county clerk confirmed it was never written. I moved down to Category 2 transportation. This was for Blair and my father. I listed the monthly payments for the SUV, listing them out in a block sum for the last fiscal year. Total $7,344. Note: lease payments for Range Rover Evoque. Driver Blair Marlowe. Payer Adeline Marlowe. You drive to brunch in this car to talk about my lack of ambition. I pay for the gas you burn to get there. I added the insurance premium for my father's truck. Amount $1,200 semi-annually. Note policy reinstatement after lapse for non-payment. You told your friends you got a loyalty discount. The discount was me. My fingers flew across the keyboard. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. Every keystroke felt like I was removing a brick from the wall that had been crushing me. Then came Category 3 utilities. I listed the electric bills during the summer months when they ran the air conditioning at 68 degrees while I sat in my apartment with a fan to save money. I listed the water bills from when Blair decided to install a high-pressure rainfall showerhead that she could not afford to operate. Note: you enjoy the lights. I pay the current. I moved to Category 4 medical. This one was tricky, but necessary. I listed the copays for my mother's stress-induced migraines, treatments she sought at a private boutique clinic that did not take her primary insurance. Amount $400 per session. Note: you told the family these were covered by Dad's premium plan. Dad's plan was canceled 3 months prior. I covered the invoice at the reception desk while you waited in the car. But the pièce de résistance, the section that would truly shatter the illusion, was Category 5 lifestyle. This was the longest section. It was a scrolling indictment of their vanity. Date May 5th, 2023. Amount $342. Merchant, the Golden Oak Steakhouse. Note anniversary dinner. You posted a photo of the lobster. I paid for the lobster. Date June 10th, 2023. Amount $2,000. Merchant Rolling Hills Country Club. Note annual membership dues. You told Mr. Henderson you were a founding member. The club was going to revoke your locker access until I wired the funds. Date December 25th, 2022. Amount $500. Merchant Apple Store. Note iPad. Gift for Cousin Miller. Tag said, from Uncle Frank and Aunt Janine. Card used Adeline Marlowe Visa, ending in 4590. Underneath this section, I did not just leave it at text. I opened my folder of evidence. I began inserting screenshots. They were arranged in a grid, a mosaic of manipulation. There was a text from Mom Addie. Honey, just this once. The card machine is down, and I am at the register. It is so embarrassing. Can you Venmo me? I will pay you back Tuesday. Tuesday never came. There was a text from Blair Sis. I need this dress for the networking event. It is an investment in my career. Just this once. Please. I am good at it. She was not good for it. There was a text from Dad. Adeline, cover the club fee. I'm closing a big deal with a client there next week. It will pay for itself 10 times over. Do not be short-sighted. Just this once. I captioned the image grid with a single line. Just this once appears in my message history 47 times in the last 3 years. It is no longer a favor. It is a business model. I scrolled to the bottom of the email. I needed a closing statement. Something that summarized the absurdity of the last decade. I needed a principle that they could not argue with. something that stripped away the emotion and left only the cold, hard logic. I wrote, I am done listening to lectures about my finances from people whose lifestyle is subsidized by my paycheck. I am done being the punchline of your dinner table jokes while being the sponsor of the dinner itself. Two things cannot be true at the same time. I cannot be worthless and the person keeping everything from being cut off. You have to choose one. Since you have chosen to label me as broken, I am removing my financial support so that I can live up to your expectations. Now comes the distribution list. In the tow field, I added Frank Marlowe, I added Janine Marlowe, I added Blair Marlowe, I added Aunt Sarah, the one who always commented on my cheap shoes at Thanksgiving and told me I needed to dress more like my sister. But the real damage, the nuclear option, was the CC field. I had thought long and hard about this. If I only sent it to them, they would hide it. They would delete it. They would spin a story that I had sent a crazy, hate-filled rant because I was jealous. They would control the narrative. I could not let them control the narrative. I typed in the email address for Mr. Henderson. He was my father's best friend. A man my father was desperately trying to impress. A man who actually had the wealth my father pretended to have. I typed in the email address for Mrs. Gable. She was the head of the church social committee, the woman my mother constantly tried to outdo in terms of blessings and charity. I typed in the email address for the membership director at Rolling Hills Country Club. I typed in the general inquiry email for the dealership where Blair serviced her car. I was not just telling my family, I was telling their audience. I was telling the people they performed for. I was making sure that the next time my father bragged about a deal, or my mother bragged about a vacation, Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Gable would have this PDF sitting in the back of their minds. They would know. They would not be able to lie because the witnesses were now in the room. I checked the clock. It was 1 a.m. If I sent it now, they might wake up, see it, and start calling me in a panic. They might try to stop me. No, I wanted them to see it when they were most vulnerable, when they were out in the world. I went to the scheduling options. Send later. I spun the dial to 9:03 in the morning. Why 9 or 3? Because at 9 o'clock, my father is usually holding court at the local coffee shop with his retired buddies. At 9 o'clock, my mother is usually at her Pilates class, checking her phone before the session starts. At 9 o'clock, Blair is scrolling through social media in bed. 9:03 gave them 3 minutes to settle into their day. It ensured they would be looking at their screens. I pressed the blue schedule button. The email vanished from my screen, tucked away in the outbox, a digital time bomb ticking down the seconds. I sat back, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years, but I was not done. The email was just the announcement. It was the declaration of war. Now I needed to deploy the troops. I did not close my laptop. Instead, I minimized the mail app and opened a new spreadsheet file. I named it Payment Stop Plan. The email would embarrass them, but embarrassment fades. Hunger does not. Darkness does not. Eviction does not. I created a checklist of actions to take immediately following the email delivery. Action item 1. Call Northside Electric. Remove my card from the autopay on the account ending in 882. Set the notification email back to my father's address. Action item 2. Call the auto finance company. Inform them that as a co-signer, I am withdrawing authorization for automatic withdrawals from my checking account. If the primary borrower misses a payment, let them send the repossession truck. Action item 3. The Summit Horizon fraud. This was the big one. I noted the number for the fraud department. I would not just stop paying this, I would report it as identity theft. That would freeze the account immediately and trigger an investigation that would lead straight to the IP address at my parents' house. Action item 4. The cell phone family plan. I was the account holder. They were the lines. I typed out the command, suspend lines for non-payment of share. I would port my number out to a new carrier at 10 in the morning, leaving their 3 lines on a plan with no administrator and a past due balance. I looked at the list. It was brutal. It was systematic. It was the actions of a compliance director cleaning up a toxic asset. They thought the email was the punishment. They were wrong. The email was just a courtesy notice. The punishment was the silence that would follow. The punishment was the moment the waiter brought the check and the card declined. The punishment was the moment the lights flickered and went out. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The city lights of Port Mason were clear and sharp. For the first time in my life, I did not feel like the daughter who was not enough. I felt like the CEO of my own life, and I had just fired the board of directors. I went to bed. I slept soundly, and I set my alarm for 9:05. I wanted to be awake to hear the world burn. The drive to Maple Row Heights felt different this time. Usually, as I navigated the winding streets lined with manicured oaks and oversized colonial houses, I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, a physical manifestation of the inadequacy they had trained me to feel. But tonight, as I pulled my 2015 Honda Civic into the driveway, parking it conspicuously between my father's gleaming truck and Blair's black Range Rover, I felt nothing but a cold, clinical curiosity. I was no longer the victim returning to the scene of the crime. I was the arsonist returning to verify the wind direction before striking the match. I had dressed for the part. I wore a pair of black slacks that were slightly faded at the knees and a beige cardigan that had begun to pill at the elbows. It was the uniform of the struggling daughter, the costume they expected me to wear. It made them feel comfortable. It made them feel superior. If I had walked in wearing a tailored suit and carrying a designer bag, they would have been on edge. They would have sensed a shift in the power dynamic. I needed them to be comfortable. I needed them to be arrogant. When I walked through the front door, the house smelled of rosemary, roasted garlic, and expensive perfume. It was the scent of the Marlowe brand. "There she is," my father boomed from the living room. He was holding a crystal tumbler of scotch, standing by the fireplace as if posing for a portrait. "We were worried you might have had car trouble. Again." He took a sip of his drink, his eyes scanning my outfit with a look of performative pity. "You know, Adeline, presentation is everything. You walk in here looking like you just finished a shift at the library. It worries your mother." "I am fine, Dad," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "Just tired." "Tired is a choice," he said, turning back to his guest. Tonight, the audience was Aunt Sarah. Sarah was not technically my aunt, but a distant cousin of my mother who functioned as the family's primary gossip distributor. She was the reason I had included her on the CC list of the email scheduled for 9:03 the next morning. If Sarah knew, the entire state would know by noon. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the gold-rimmed plates that were supposedly family heirlooms, but were actually bought on credit 5 years ago. I took my usual seat at the end of the table, the spot furthest from the head, the spot reserved for the child who did not quite measure up. Dinner was a performance art piece. Blair dominated the first 20 minutes. She was glowing, her phone sitting on the table next to her wine glass, screen lighting up every few seconds with notifications. Sus. "So, the resort in Turks and Caicos is just insane," Blair said, gesturing with her fork. "We are looking at the oceanfront villas. Ryan says we need privacy to really disconnect. You know how stressful it has been lately with the brand launch." "You deserve it, sweetie," Mom said, beaming. She reached out and squeezed Blair's hand. "You work so hard. It is important to recharge. We have always said that, have we not? Frank quality of life is paramount." "Absolutely," Dad said, cutting into his steak. "You cannot put a price on mental health. If you have the means, you should enjoy the fruit of your labor." I cut a small piece of potato and put it in my mouth. It tasted like ash. The means they were talking about was a credit line they were trying to bully me into signing for. The fruit of their labor was my paycheck. "Speaking of means," Aunt Sarah chirped, turning her gaze toward me. "Janine was telling me how wonderful it is that the family finances are so stable right now. With the economy the way it is, so many people are struggling. It is a blessing to be debt-free." Mom straightened up, preening like a peacock. "Oh, we have always been very disciplined. I tell the girls all the time, Never spend what you do not have. We have never missed a bill payment in 30 years. Not once. It is a matter of integrity. I stopped chewing. I placed my fork down on the plate. The sound was a soft clink, but in my ears, it sounded like a gunshot. Never missed a payment. I thought about the foreclosure notice I had intercepted 2 years ago. I thought about the red envelopes from the electric company I had fished out of their trash. I thought about the $15,000 currently sitting on a fraudulent account in my name. That is true, Dad added, leaning back in his chair. Discipline. That is what it takes. Adeline, you could learn a thing or two from your mother. You are always so worried about money. You hoard it like a squirrel. It is a scarcity mindset. That is why you are still driving that piece of junk and wearing whatever that is. He gestured vaguely at my sweater with his steak knife. You are broke because you think you are broke. Poverty is a mentality, Adeline, and frankly, it is exhausting to watch. Blair giggled. Aunt Sarah offered a sympathetic, tight-lipped smile that said, "Poor thing." They were all looking at me. They were waiting for me to shrink. They were waiting for me to look down at my plate, mumble an apology, and accept the shame they were handing me. That was the script. We had rehearsed it 100 times. But tonight, I went off script. I picked up my napkin and dabbed the corner of my mouth. I looked directly at my father. I did not blink. "The bills are not late," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the ambient jazz music playing in the background. "But that is not because of discipline, Dad. It is because there is a person who pays them 24 hours before the cutoff notice is generated." The silence that followed was instant and absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens when a glass shatters in a crowded room. Blair stopped mid-chew. Mom's smile froze, looking like a glitch in a video file. Aunt Sarah's eyes darted between us, sensing blood in the water. "Excuse me," Mom asked, her voice high and brittle. "I said," I continued, keeping my gaze locked on my father, "that it is very easy to have a perfect payment history when the money is coming from an external source. You are right. Though, the lights have never been turned off. The cars have never been repossessed. The house is still standing. It is a very impressive magic trick." My father's face turned a shade of red that matched the wine in his glass. He slammed his knife down. "That is enough," he barked. "I do not know what kind of mood you are in, but I will not have you disrespecting this family at the dinner table. You are being ungrateful." "Ungrateful for what?" I asked calmly. "For dinner. It is delicious. I believe I paid for the groceries last Tuesday when Mom's card was declined at Whole Foods. So, you are welcome." Aunt Sarah let out a small, audible gasp. My father stood up. The chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. "Kitchen, now!" It was a command. It was the tone he used when I was 10 years old and had broken a vase. He expected me to cower. He expected me to beg for forgiveness. I stood up slowly. I smoothed the front of my cheap cardigan. I walked past Blair, who was staring at me with her mouth slightly open, and followed my father into the kitchen. The kitchen was pristine, white marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, a massive island that cost more than my entire education. He spun around to face me as soon as the swinging door closed, blocking us from the view of the dining room, but not completely muting our voices. He got right in my face. I could smell the scotch on his breath. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" he hissed, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Sarah is out there. Do you have any idea how bad you are making us look? You are embarrassing yourself. You are making up stories because you are jealous of your sister." "I am not jealous of Blair. Dad," I said. "I am tired of financing her." "You watch your tone." He pointed a finger in my face. "You think because you helped out a few times you own this place? You are nothing without this family. We gave you a name. We gave you a start. If you think you can come into my house and play the martyr, you are wrong. You are going to go back out there. You are going to apologize to your mother, and you are going to tell Sarah you are just stressed from work. Do you understand me?" He paused, leaning in closer. "Do not try to fight me on this. Adeline, you cannot win. You are small. You have no resources. You are barely keeping your head above water. If you make an enemy of this family, you will drown. Do not make me cut you off." The threat hung in the air. Cut me off, as if I were drawing from a trust fund, as if I were a parasite. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the anger. I saw the desperation of a man who knew, deep down, that his entire world was built on a foundation of sand, and I was the only thing holding back the tide. I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a person who has already seen the end of the movie. "You are right, Dad," I said softly. "I cannot win against you. Winning implies that we are playing a game." I took a step back, creating distance between us. "I am not trying to win," I said. "I am settling the ledger." "What does that mean?" he demanded, his brow furrowing. "It means I am done," I said. "I am not going back out there to apologize. I am going home. I suggest you enjoy the rest of the dinner. The wine really is excellent. I remember thinking that when I saw the receipt for the case." I turned around and walked out. I did not look at the dining table as I passed through the hallway. I heard my mother's voice, shrill and questioning, asking, "Frank, what is happening?" I walked out the front door into the cool night air. I walked to my car. I got in, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway. As I drove away, I looked at the house in my rearview mirror. Every window was blazing with light. It looked warm. It looked inviting. It looked rich. I glanced at the digital clock on my dashboard. It was 8:45 in the evening. 12 hours and 18 minutes. That was how long they had left. I felt a strange sensation in my hands as I gripped the steering wheel. For the first time in 10 years, they were not shaking. I was not crying. I was not replaying the argument in my head, wondering what I could have said differently to make them love me. I drove back to my apartment in silence. When I got inside, I did not turn on the TV. I did not pour a glass of wine. I walked to my laptop, which was sitting on the kitchen counter where I had left it. The screen was black. I tapped the spacebar. The screen glowed to life. I opened my email client. I clicked on the scheduled folder. There it was, one email, scheduled for tomorrow, 9:03 in the morning. I hovered my mouse over the cancel button. It would be so easy. I could delete it. I could go back to being a good daughter. I could go back to being the safety net. I could apologize tomorrow, sign the papers for Blair's car, and let them continue to abuse me for another decade. It would be safer. It would be quieter. Then I remembered my father's face in the kitchen. "You are nothing without this family." I moved the mouse away. I closed the laptop. I went to my bedroom and laid out my clothes for work the next day. I chose my favorite suit. I chose the heels that made me feel tall. Tomorrow, I was not going to be the girl in the beige cardigan. Tomorrow, I was going to be in the storm. The digital clock on the bottom right corner of my monitor read 9:02 in the morning. I was sitting in my office at Stonewick Compliance Solutions. To anyone walking past my glass walls, I looked like a model employee. My posture was upright. My hands were resting on the keyboard, and I had a fresh cup of coffee steaming to my left. The office was quiet, filled only with the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of colleagues discussing weekend plans. Inside my head, however, I was counting down like mission control. I had minimized the email window, but I knew it was there, lurking in the server, waiting for the scheduled timestamp. I took a sip of coffee. It was hot, bitter, and grounding. 9:03. The minute hand clicked over. Somewhere in the cloud, a packet of data was released. My email, titled Invoice for Unreimbursed Living Expenses, was instantly delivered to the inboxes of Frank Marlowe, Janine Marlowe, Blair Marlowe, Aunt Sarah, Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Gable, and the membership director of Rolling Hills Country Club. For the first 30 seconds, nothing happened. The world did not end. The building did not shake. I watched a bird fly past my window, completely indifferent to the fact that I had just dropped a nuclear bomb on my family's reputation. Then, my personal cell phone, which I had placed face up on my desk, lit up. It vibrated once, then twice, then it began to dance across the mahogany surface, a continuous, angry buzz that sounded like a trapped hornet. I looked at the screen. Mom. I let it ring. I wanted her to sit in the panic for a moment. I wanted her to feel the helplessness of not being able to control the narrative immediately. It rang until it went to voicemail. 2 seconds later, it lit up again. Mom. I picked it up this time. I did not say hello. I just pressed the green button and held the phone to my ear. Adeline. Oh my God, Adeline. She was crying, but it was not the soft, heartbroken weeping of a mother who realizes she has hurt her child. It was the shrill, hyperventilating panic of a socialite who had just realized she walked out of the bathroom with her skirt tucked into her underwear. Are you insane? She shrieked. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Mrs. Gable is on that list. Do you hear me? The head of the prayer circle. She just texted me asking if we are being audited. How could you do this to us? How could you do this to your father? I stared at a spreadsheet on my monitor, highlighting a row of data in yellow. I did not do anything to you, Mom, I said calmly. I just sent a bill. You taught me that we should always pay our debts. I am just helping you stay accountable. You humiliated us, she screamed. You put everything in there, the therapy bills, the country club. That is a private family business. You aired our dirty laundry to the entire town. Do you know what people are going to think? They are going to think we are frauds. Are you not? I asked. The line went silent for a beat, just the sound of her ragged breathing. I cannot believe you are being this cruel, she sobbed, switching tactics from anger to victimhood instantly. After everything we gave you life. We put a roof over your head. And I paid for the roof over yours, I cut in. We are done discussing this. Mom, check your email. The payment terms are at the bottom. Have a nice day. I hung up. My hand was steady. Before I could set the phone down, a barrage of text messages flooded the screen. They were coming from Blair. Blair. What the hell? Adeline. Blair. The dealership is on this email. Are you kidding me, Blair? I have a brand deal pending with a local boutique. If they hear about this, if they think I am broke, I lose the contract. You are literally taking food out of my mouth. Blair. Pick up the phone. Now. I watched the bubbles appear and disappear as she typed furiously. Blair. Okay, look, sis, I know you are mad at Dad. I get it. He can be a lot. But why drag me into it? I am on your side. Let's talk. Just you and me. We can fix this. Just send a follow-up email saying your account was hacked. Please, do it for me. I let out a dry laugh. It was classic Blair. First came the rage, then came the manipulation. She did not care about the truth. She only cared about the hack excuse. She wanted me to lie to the world to save her image. She wanted me to fall on the sword again. I did not reply. Then, a single text message came through from my father. Frank Marlowe. You are a traitor. 5 words, no denial, no explanation, just a declaration of enemy status. He viewed his family not as a unit of love, but as a regime, and I had just committed treason. I set the phone to Do Not Disturb and turned it over. I needed to focus. But the notifications were now popping up on my Apple Watch. The family group chat, the extended one that included cousins, aunts, and uncles, was waking up. Usually, this chat was reserved for birthday wishes and holiday photos. Today there was a crime scene investigation. Cousin Miller. Wait, I am confused. Did anyone else get that email from Adeline Aunt Sarah? I got it. I am reading it right now. I do not understand. It says Adeline paid for the anniversary dinner. I thought Frank said he treated everyone. Uncle Bob. Is this a joke? Why is there an invoice for a Range Rover? Frank told me he bought that outright with cash from the consulting gig. Cousin Miller. This looks real. Guys, there are screenshots. Adeline, is this real? The narrative was cracking. For years, my father had painted a picture of me as the leech, the failure, the one who needed constant support. Now, The extended family was looking at a line item accounting that proved I was the host, and they were the parasites. I did not type anything. I let them simmer. I let them read the notes about the just this once texts. I let them do the math. Then, a notification popped up on my work email. My heart skipped a beat. I had sent the invoice from my personal account, but I had CC'd the external parties. Had one of them replied? I clicked over to my personal email tab. There was a new message in the thread. It was a reply all. My stomach dropped. Who was reckless enough to hit reply all on a disaster like this? I looked at the sender, William Henderson. Mr. Henderson. My father's idol, the man my father bought expensive scotch for, the man whose approval my father craved more than his own children's love. I opened the email. From William Henderson to Adeline Marlowe, CC, Frank Marlowe, Janine Marlowe, Blair Marlowe, Sarah Jenkins. Subject re-invoice for unreimbursed living expenses. Frank, I am getting this email and I am a bit confused. Is this your daughter? I see my name listed in the notes regarding the country club dues. I distinctly remember you telling me at the clubhouse last month that your liquidity was at an all-time high and you were looking for investment vehicles. If your daughter is covering your membership fees to keep you from being locked out, we might need to revisit that partnership conversation we had scheduled for Tuesday. I do not do business with partners who are over-leveraged. Please clarify, Bill. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I had expected embarrassment. I had expected gossip. I had not expected Mr. Henderson to strip my father naked in front of the entire mailing list. I do not do business with partners who are over-leveraged. That sentence was a death blow to my father's ego. It destroyed the one thing he valued more than money, his reputation as a businessman. He had been lying to Mr. Henderson, pretending to be a wealthy peer, and my invoice had just revealed him to be a man living on his daughter's credit card. My phone started buzzing again, vibrating so hard against the desk it nearly fell off. I knew it was my father. He would be purple with rage right now. He would be screaming at the walls. I finally picked up the phone. I unlocked it. I opened the group chat where the cousins were still asking questions. I typed one message. Adeline Marlowe. If you want to talk to me, speak with the truth. If you want to lie, stay silent. I have receipts for everything. I hit send. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had done it. I had burned the bridge. There was no going back to Sunday dinners now. There was no going back to being the quiet, dutiful daughter. But just as I was beginning to feel the weight of victory, a different kind of notification appeared on my screen. This one was not from a family member. It was not from a friend. It was an automated alert from my credit monitoring service. Urgent new inquiry detected. I clicked the link instantly. The alert was from Summit Horizon Financial. Action account verification request. Status flagged for review. Note: the account holder has contested the validity of the debt. The lender has initiated a fraud investigation. Please contact us immediately to verify your identity. My blood ran cold. I had flagged the account as fraudulent the night before. As part of my preparation, I expected a slow process, a bureaucratic back and forth that would take weeks. But this alert meant something else. It meant Summit Horizon was moving fast. They were reaching out to the contact information on file to verify the user. And the contact information on file was not mine. It was my parents' home phone number. I realized with a jolt of horror what was happening right now at the house on Maple Row. While my mother was crying about Mrs. Gable and my father was raging about Mr. Henderson, the phone was going to ring, and it was going to be a fraud investigator asking for Adeline Marlowe. If my father answered, if he tried to pretend to be me, or if he tried to claim the debt was valid, he would be committing federal wire fraud on a recorded line. Or worse. If they realized the jig was up, they might try to pin it on me. They might try to say I opened it and forgot. They might try to say I authorized it verbally. The email had scared them. Yes, it had humiliated them. But this was dangerous. This was the point where the family drama turned into a criminal case. I looked at the traitor text from my father again. He did not know about the fraud investigation yet. He was too busy being angry about the email. But when that phone rang, he would know. He would know that I knew about the secret $15,000. And a man like Frank Marlowe, cornered, humiliated, and exposed, is a dangerous animal. I grabbed a notepad and a pen. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear of him, from the intensity of the game. I wrote down the time, 9:45. The morning was not even over, and I had a feeling the real war was just beginning. The invoice was just the opening statement. The cross-examination was about to start. I needed to be ready to defend myself against people who knew exactly how to hurt me, because they were the ones who built me. I took a deep breath, picked up my office phone, and dialed the number for the legal department at Stonewick. I needed advice, because by lunchtime, I might not just be an estranged daughter, I might be the primary witness in a prosecution against my own father. The alert from Summit Horizon Financial was still blinking on my screen, a red beacon signaling that the ground beneath my feet was no longer stable. I sat frozen for a moment, the noise of the office fading into a dull roar. The humiliation of the email was one thing. That was social warfare. But this, a fraud investigation initiated against an account linked to my parents' address, was legal warfare. And unlike my father, I did not enter a battlefield without knowing the terrain. I minimized the alert and logged back into the credit monitoring portal. My hands were cold, but my mind was operating with the detached precision of a forensic accountant. I needed more than just a notification. I needed the anatomy of the lie. I pulled the full credit report again, this time expanding the inquiries section for the Summit Horizon account. Origination date, February 14th, 2021. Origination IP address, 192.168.1.14, ISP. Cox Communications. Account holder, Frank Marlowe. Verification method, electronic signature via email confirmation. I stared at the screen. The IP address was the smoking gun. It traced directly back to the Wi-Fi network at the house on Maple Row, but the electronic signature, that was the twist of the knife. I opened my personal email archive and searched for Dad and info around the date of February 2021. The search results populated instantly. There it was, an email from Frank Marlowe, dated February 13th, 2021. The subject line was innocuous insurance paperwork. Urgent. Adeline, I am updating the beneficiary details on the family life insurance policy. I need you to confirm your social security number and current driver's license number. The agent needs it by the end of the day or the policy lapses. Just reply with the info. Thanks. Dad. I clicked on my reply. Sent 20 minutes later. Here it is. Dad, thanks for handling this. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. I remembered that day. I was busy at work, stressed about a deadline, and grateful that my father was taking care of my future security. I had handed him the keys to my identity because I trusted him. I had trusted the man who called me worthless to protect me. And the next day, February 14th, while I was working a double shift to cover Blair's car payment, someone at that house using that information had logged onto Summit Horizon's website and opened a $15,000 line of credit in my name. I looked at the timestamp on the electronic signature log from the credit report, signed at 8:45 p.m. I checked my work calendar for February 14th, 2021. Entry, late night audit review, office until 10 p.m. I was not even near a computer that could have accessed that IP address. I was 15 miles away, eating a vending machine sandwich at my desk. It was not a mistake. It was not a creative accounting measure. It was a calculated theft, executed with the cold-blooded efficiency of a stranger, but performed by the people who were supposed to love me most. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was not a text from my family. It was a message from Cousin Miller. Miller. Hey, Adeline. I think you need to know this. Uncle Frank is calling around. He just got off the phone with my mom. I typed back. What is he saying? Miller, he is saying you are mentally unstable. He is telling everyone that the email is a fabrication you made up because you are in debt and trying to extort money from them. He says you actually stole money from his business account years ago, and this is your way of covering your tracks before an audit comes out. He is calling you a thief. Addie. I read the message twice, then I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that startled the colleague in the cubicle next to me. A thief. They were not just trying to save face. They were trying to criminalize me. They realized that my invoice was damaging, so they were building a counter-narrative where I was the villain. They were projecting their own crimes onto me. If they could convince the family and maybe even the authorities that I was a liar and a thief, then any evidence I brought forward would look like the desperate flailing of a guilty woman. It was a brilliant strategy, in a sociopathic kind of way. It relied on the assumption that I would be too emotional, too hurt, or too weak to fight back effectively. They were banking on the Adeline of 5 years ago, the one who cried when they forgot her birthday. But that Adeline was gone. The woman sitting in this chair was a director of compliance. My entire career was built on proving who did what, when, and how much. If they wanted to make this about theft, I would show them what a real investigation looked like. I realized then that simply stopping the payments was not enough. If I just cut them off, they would spin it as me abandoning them in their time of need. They would play the victim card until the end of time. I needed to do more than just leave. I needed to lock the door and bar the windows so they could never reach into my life again. I needed legal insulation. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for a lawyer I had met at a networking event last year. Her name was Elena, and she specialized in family law and financial fraud. Elena speaking? Elena. It is Adeline Marlowe. I need an emergency consultation. Today, I have a situation involving unauthorized credit usage and potential identity theft by immediate family members. There was a pause on the line. How much are we talking about? $15,000 in principal on one account, but the total exposure over the last 5 years is closer to 6 figures if we count the coerced payments. Can you prove the coercion? I have texts, I have emails, I have a paper trail that goes back to the Obama administration, and I have an IP address for the fraudulent account opening. Okay, Elena said, her voice shifting into professional gear. Come by at 2 o'clock. Bring everything. And Adeline, do not talk to them. Do not answer the phone. If they show up at your work, call security. If they show up at your home, do not open the door. You are in a hostile legal situation now. I know, I said. I initiated it. I hung up and turned back to my computer. I had 3 hours before the meeting. I needed to prepare the final blow. I opened a new document. I titled it Revocation of Access and Financial Severance. This was not an invoice. This was a restraining order for my money. I began to list every single point of entry they had into my financial life. Item 1. The authorized user card. I logged into my credit card portal and clicked Remove Authorized User next to my mother's name. The card in her wallet, the one she likely tried to use for lunch today to soothe her nerves, was now a useless piece of plastic. Item 2. The streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Spotify, all linked to my personal email, all paid by my debit card. I went through and changed the passwords to a random string of characters. I selected Log out of all devices. Tonight, when they tried to escape their misery by watching a movie, the screens would go black. Item 3. The family cell phone plan. This was the hardest one, emotionally. It was the last tether. I logged into Verizon. I selected Transfer of Billing Responsibility. I initiated a transfer request for the 3 lines ending in my parents' and sisters' numbers. I set the transfer to be sent to my father's email address. If they did not accept the transfer within 24 hours, I would simply cancel the lines. I was porting my own number to a new carrier immediately. But I needed one more thing. I needed something that would stop my father's slander campaign dead in its tracks. I went back to the invoice email thread. I hit reply. But this time, I removed the external CCs. I removed Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Gable. This next message was just for the family. It was a warning shot fired across the bow. To Frank Marlowe, Janine Marlowe, Blair Marlowe. Subject regarding the theft allegations. I have been informed that you are telling family members I stole from you. That is an interesting choice of words. Attached to this email is a PDF containing the IP address log and electronic signature timestamp for the Summit Horizon financial account opened in my name on February 14, 2021. You will notice the IP address matches the router at 124 Maple Row. You will also notice that I was clocked in at work 15 miles away at the time of signing. I have a meeting with a fraud attorney at 2 o'clock. If I hear one more whisper about me being a thief, or if you do not publicly retract your statements to Cousin Miller by 5 p.m. today, I will hand this PDF over to the Summit Horizon Fraud Department and the local police. Identity theft over $10,000 is a felony. Do you really want to have that conversation with Mr. Henderson? The choice is yours. You can be broke, or you can be broke and under indictment. Choose wisely. I hit send. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. I felt a strange, cold power coursing through my veins. For 32 years, I had been the one afraid of their anger. I had been the one tiptoeing around their moods. Now, I was the one holding the thunderbolt. I stood up and walked to the window of my office. The city below looked small, manageable. They wanted to paint me as a criminal fine. I would show them what justice looked like. I was not just cutting the purse strings. I was building a fortress, and I was pulling up the drawbridge. I checked the time, 12:30. I went to the break room and made a fresh cup of tea. As the water boiled, I thought about my mother's face when her credit card declined at lunch. I thought about my father's face when he read the email about the IP address. I took a sip of tea. It tasted sweet. Let them scramble. Let them panic. Let them realize that the worthless daughter was the only one who knew how to keep receipts. I was done playing the victim. I was done playing the savior. I was ready to be the executioner of their comfort. The meeting with Elena, my attorney, lasted exactly 55 minutes. In that short span of time, the landscape of my life shifted from a battlefield of emotions to a structured grid of legal strategy. Elena was a woman of sharp angles and even sharper intellect, and she gave me the one thing my family had never provided: a playbook for survival. "Adeline," she had said, leaning across her mahogany desk, "you are no longer a daughter. In the eyes of the law, you are a creditor, and they are debtors who have engaged in fraudulent activity. If you treat them like family, you will lose. If you treat them like a hostile counterparty, you will walk away with your life intact. Do not speak to them. Do not answer their calls. If it is not in writing, it did not happen." I took that advice and turned it into a fortress. By 3 p.m, I was back at my desk at Stonewick Compliance Solutions, but I was not doing company work. I was executing a personal lockdown. First came the credit freezes. I logged into Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, one by one. I toggled the switch that locked my credit report behind a PIN number that only I knew. It was a simple digital action, a few clicks of a mouse, but it felt like I was welding the gates of my castle shut. For years, my credit score had been an open door for my father to walk through whenever he needed a bridge loan for his vanity projects. Now, the door was not just closed. It was bricked over. Next, I changed every password I owned. My banking login, which used to be a variation of my childhood dog's name, a name my parents obviously knew, became a complex string of alphanumeric chaos generated by an encryption app. I turned on two-factor authentication for everything. If anyone tried to log into my Wells Fargo account from the IP address on Maple Row, my phone would scream and their access would be denied. Then came the formal declaration of war. I drafted a formal letter to Summit Horizon Financial. I did not use the template on their website. I used the affidavit Elena had provided. It was cold, precise, and legally binding. To the Fraud Department of Summit Horizon Financial, I, Adeline Marlowe, hereby declare under penalty of perjury that the account ending in 4492 was opened without my knowledge, consent, or authorization. I did not receive any funds from this account. I did not sign the credit agreement. The electronic signature on file is a forgery. I am attaching a police report filed this afternoon regarding identity theft. I printed it, signed it, scanned it, and sent it via certified mail and email. Then, I turned my attention to the auto-pay systems. My instinct was to simply delete everything, to wipe the slate clean. But Elena had warned me about that. If you delete the history, she said, they can claim you are destroying evidence of a verbal contract. They can say you agreed to pay and then tried to hide the record. So, I did not delete. I canceled. I went into the portal for the electric company. I went into the portal for the water department. I went into the portal for the auto lease. I turned off the automatic payment feature. I removed my card details. But before I closed the tabs, I downloaded every single billing statement from the last 5 years. I created a digital archive that proved 2 things: first, that I had paid, and second, that the bills were in their names. I was not erasing the past. I was just refusing to finance the future. At 4:15, the front desk security called my office line. Ms. Marlowe, the guard, Marcus, said. His voice was tight. There is a gentleman here to see you, a Mr. Frank Marlowe. He says he is your father and that it is a family emergency. He is agitated. My heart hammered against my ribs, a primitive reflex of fear, but my mind remained in the boardroom. Is he on the guest list, Marcus? I asked, though I knew the answer. No, ma'am. Does he have an appointment? No, ma'am. He is demanding to come up. He is raising his voice. I took a deep breath. This was the test. The old Adeline would have rushed down to the lobby to hush him, to prevent a scene, to absorb his anger so it would not spill onto the polished floors of her workplace. Marcus, I said, my voice steady, I am not expecting visitors, and I do not conduct personal business during working hours. Please inform Mr. Marlowe that if he does not have an appointment, he needs to leave the premises. If he refuses or continues to cause a disturbance, please follow standard building protocol for hostile intruders. Understood, Ms. Marlowe. I hung up. I did not go to the window to watch. I did not hide in the bathroom. I sat at my desk and continued typing my letter of conditions. 10 minutes later, Marcus called back. He is gone, ma'am. We had to threaten to call the police, but he left. He shouted something about you being... Well, I will not repeat it. Thank you. Marcus, please flag his name in the system. He is not to be allowed past the turnstiles under any circumstances. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was the absence of weight. For 30 years, I had believed my father was an unstoppable force. I thought his anger was a hurricane I had to weather. But today, I realized he was just a man shouting in a lobby, easily stopped by a security guard making $15 an hour and a plastic ID badge. His power existed only because I had given it to him. I returned to the document on my screen. This was the letter of conditions Elena had suggested. It was a masterstroke of negotiation. My family was drowning. I knew that. Without my money, the lights would be off in 2 weeks. The cars would be gone in 30 days. Elena had suggested offering them a lifeline, but one that came with ironclad chains. I typed the final clause. Offer of transitional support. Adeline Marlowe agrees to pay the minimum balance on the utility and mortgage accounts for a period of exactly 30 days from today's date, to allow the Marlowe family time to restructure their finances. This one-time payment is contingent upon the immediate execution of the attached settlement agreement, in which Frank and Janine Marlowe admit that all previous payments made by Adeline Marlowe were loans, not gifts, and acknowledge the debt of $240,000. Furthermore, the agreement includes a non-disparagement clause. Any further defamatory statements regarding Adeline Marlowe's character or financial status will result in an immediate lawsuit for slander. It was a trap. If they signed, they admitted the debt and legally cleared my name. If they refused, they lost the house immediately. I sent the document to their email addresses. I did not add a subject line. The attachment name spoke for itself. Settlement offer final, PDF. By 5:30, The sun was beginning to set, casting long orange shadows across my office. My phone, which had been silent for an hour, lit up with a notification from Blair. Blair. Hey sis, I am outside your building. I saw Dad leave. He is a mess. Look, I get it. He went too far. But I am scared. Addie, can we just grab coffee? There's a Starbucks around the corner. Just you and me. No parents. I just want to understand what is happening. We are sisters. I looked at the message. We are sisters. She had not used that card when she was buying a Land Rover on my credit. She had not used that card when she was mocking my clothes at dinner. She was using it now because she needed an ally to plead her case. She wanted a face-to-face meeting because in person, she could cry. In person, she could touch my arm. In person, she could manipulate the emotional atmosphere. I typed my reply. Adeline, I am not available for coffee. All communication regarding the financial separation must be done via email, so there is a record. If you have questions about the settlement offer, please direct them to my attorney. Her contact info is in the document. Blair, seriously. You are going to lawyer up on your own sister. I just want to talk. Adeline, and I just want a paper trail. Write it down. Blair, or do not say it at all. I blocked her number for the rest of the evening. Then came the email from Mom. It arrived at 6:00. The subject line was, My health. Adeline, I am writing this from bed. My migraine is blinding. I feel like my chest is tight. The stress you are causing is literally killing me. Your father is pacing the floor, talking about how he has failed, and I'm terrified he's going to have a heart attack. Is this what you want? Do you want to bury your parents? We are old people, Adeline. We make mistakes. But to cut us off like this, to treat us like criminals, it is evil. If something happens to me tonight, it will be on your conscience. Please, just call me. We can fix this. It was a masterpiece of guilt. It hit every button she had installed in my psyche since childhood. The fragile health, the threat of death, the accusation of malice. I read it, and for a second, my finger hovered over the call button. What if she really was sick? What if the stress was too much? Then I looked at the invoice I had compiled the night before. I looked at the entry for medical expenses, boutique clinic. I remembered the time she had claimed to be sick to get me to pay for spa treatments. I remembered how her migraines always seemed to vanish when there was a party to attend or a vacation to plan. She was holding her own well-being hostage and demanding a ransom. I hit reply. Mom, if you are experiencing chest pain, you need to call 911 immediately. I am not a doctor, and I cannot help you with a medical emergency. However, I will no longer buy the peace of this family by financing my own destruction. I will not set myself on fire just to keep you warm. Read the settlement offer. Sign it, or do not. But do not use your health as a bargaining chip. It does not work anymore. I sent it. I packed my bag. I turned off the lights in my office. As I walked to the elevator, I felt a sense of profound exhaustion, but it was a clean exhaustion. It was the tiredness of a soldier who had finished building the perimeter wall. They were cornered. Dad had been turned away by security. Blair had been denied her emotional manipulation. Mom had been stripped of her guilt trip. They had no options left. They could not bully me. They could not charm me. They could not guilt me, which meant they would have to face me. But I was not going to meet them in the living room on Maple Row. I was not going to meet them in a coffee shop where they could whisper. I pulled out my phone and sent one final email to the group. Subject, the final meeting. I am willing to meet in person to discuss the transition of assets and the signing of the settlement agreement, but we will do it on my terms. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, we will meet at the bank, specifically, the main branch of First National on State Street. We will meet in the glass conference room in the center of the lobby. I have already booked it with the branch manager. Bring your IDs, bring the keys to the cars I pay for, and bring a pen. If you do not show up, the offer expires at 10:30, and I proceed with the fraud prosecution. I chose the bank for a reason. It was neutral ground. It was silent. It was filled with security cameras. And most importantly, it was the temple of the one God my father truly worshipped: money. He would not dare scream in a bank. He would not dare lie about numbers in a place where the ledgers were kept. In the bank, there is no family rate. There is no just this once. There is only the balance. And tomorrow, the balance was due. I changed the location at 8:30 in the morning. The bank conference room I had originally proposed was secure. Yes, it was official. But I realized as I was drinking my coffee that a private room in a bank still offered them one luxury I did not want them to have: privacy. In a soundproof glass box, my father could scream. He could pound the table. He could use his physical presence to intimidate me without consequence. My mother could wail and throw herself on the floor. I needed a different kind of pressure. I needed the pressure of social surveillance. So, I sent a text: change of venue, meet me at the Daily Roast on 4th Street. Center table, 10 o'clock. The Daily Roast is a fishbowl. It is located on a busy corner of Port Mason. 3 of its 4 walls are floor-to-ceiling glass. It is always crowded with freelancers, young mothers, and business people. It is bright, exposed, and impossible to hide in. There are no dark corners. There are no angles to act. If you cause a scene at the Daily Roast, you go viral on TikTok before you even leave the parking lot. I arrived at 9:45. I secured a table right in the middle of the room. I sat with my back to the wall, facing the entrance, so I could see them coming. On the table, I placed a single, thick manila envelope, no coffee, no pastry, just the envelope and my phone, which was recording audio, screen down. They arrived at 10 or 2. They looked different than they had at the dinner party 2 nights ago. The veneer of the golden couple was cracking. My father, Frank, usually impeccable in a blazer, was wearing a polo shirt that looked slept in. His face was flushed, his eyes darting around the cafe with paranoia. My mother, Janine, wore large sunglasses inside, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. They spotted me and marched over. There was no greeting. There was no, "How are you?" My father pulled out the metal chair across from me and sat down heavily. The screech of the chair legs against the concrete floor made a few people look up. He glared at them until they looked away. "You have some nerve," he said. His voice was a low growl, tight with suppressed rage. "Changing the location, making us drive all over town. Is this a game to you?" "It is not a game," I said. "It is a negotiation. Sit down. Mom?" Mom sat next to him, refusing to take off her sunglasses. She looked small. "You have made us the laughingstock of the neighborhood," Dad continued, leaning in over the table. "I had to ignore 3 calls from Bill Henderson this morning. 3 calls. Adeline, do you know how much business Bill represents? You have humiliated this family. You have made us lose face." I looked at him calmly. Not a word about the fraud. Not a word about the money. His only concern, his primary wound, was that he had been embarrassed. "You lost face a long time ago." "Dad," I said. I just turned on the light so everyone could see it. I placed my hand on the manila envelope. "This," I said, sliding it toward the center of the table but keeping my hand on it, "is the truth. Inside this envelope is a summary of every transaction I have covered for the last 5 years. It includes the auto-pay history for the utilities. It includes the lease payments for Blair's car. And most importantly, it includes the letter I received from Summit Horizon Financial regarding the $15,000 line of credit opened in my name." My father's jaw tightened. A vein pulsed in his temple. "Put that away," he hissed. "People are watching." "Let them watch," I said. "You like an audience, don't you? You usually love performing for people." "We help each other," he snapped, his voice rising slightly. "That is what families do. We pool resources. So what if I used your credit? I fed you for 18 years. I paid for your braces. I put clothes on your back. And now you are counting pennies. You are tallying up a ledger like a loan shark." "I am not counting pennies," I replied. I am counting the years I spent believing I was worthless while I was funding your lifestyle. It is not funding, he argued. It is floating, it is cash flow management, every business does it. I am not a business, Dad, I am your daughter, and help is a two-way street. Help is mutual. I tapped the envelope. This is parasitic. And worse, it comes with insults. You take my money with one hand and slap my face with the other. You call me broke while spending my paycheck. That ends today. You are blowing this out of proportion, Mom interjected, her voice trembling. Your father had a plan. He always has a plan. The plan was fraud. Mom, I said, shifting my gaze to her. It was not a fraud. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The noise was loud. The cafe went silent for a second. People turned. He realized his mistake and lowered his voice, leaning in closer, his face inches from the envelope. It was not fraud, he whispered intensely. I only opened that account to bridge the gap. I had a check coming in from the consulting gig in March. I just needed liquidity for a few weeks to keep the club membership active. I was going to pay it back before you even noticed. The air around our table seemed to freeze. I looked at him. I do not think he even realized what he had just said. In his desperation to defend his business acumen, he had just confessed. You just admitted it, I said softly. What? He blinked. You just admitted that you opened the account, I said. You admitted that you did it to pay for a club membership. You admitted that you intended to hide it from me. That is the definition of identity theft. Dad, intent to defraud. His face was drained of color. He sat back, realizing he had walked directly into the trap. He looked at the phone sitting innocently on the table. He looked at the envelope. He looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw true fear in his eyes. Not the fear of embarrassment, but the fear of consequences. You tricked me, he muttered. I did not trick you, I said. I just let you talk. I opened the envelope. I pulled out 2 documents. I placed them side by side on the table. Here are your options, I said. My voice was clinical, devoid of the emotion he was trying to provoke. Option A. You sign this settlement agreement. It states that you acknowledge the debt of $240,000, which is the total of what I have spent on you plus the fraud account. It includes a payment plan where you assume responsibility for the fraud debt immediately. And it includes a strict non-disparagement clause. If you tell one more person I'm a thief, if you tell one more lie about my mental health, I will sue you for defamation and breach of contract. I pointed to the second document. Option B. You walk out of here. I take this recording and this IP log, and I go straight to the police station. I filed a formal criminal complaint against Frank Marlowe for identity theft and wire fraud. Then I send a copy of the police report to Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Gable, and the ethics board of your industry. I clasped my hands. You have 5 minutes to decide. The coffee here is expensive, and I have to get back to work. My mother let out a sob. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked at me, and for the first time, she did not look at me with judgment or pity. She looked at me with confusion. Adeline, she whispered, why are you doing this? Why do you hate us so much? It was the question they always asked. They confused boundaries with hatred. They confused accountability with cruelty. I do not hate you, Mom, I said. I am saving myself from you. But what do you want? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Do you want money? We do not have it. Do you want an apology? Is that it? I am sorry. Okay, I am sorry. We borrowed your name. Just stop this. I do not want an apology, I said. An apology is words. I want action. I looked at my father, who was staring at the settlement agreement as if it were a death warrant. I want to terminate my employment, I said. What? Mom asked. I want to resign from the position of family ATM, I said. I want to stop being the person you use when you need something and the person you mock when you do not. I want to be a stranger to your finances. I want you to look at me and see a daughter, not a credit score. And since you cannot do that on your own, I am making a legal contract that forces you to do it. I pushed a pen across the table. It was a cheap Bic pen. Sign it, I said, or I call the police. Right now. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at the document. It was an admission of failure. It was an admission that his success was a lie paid for by the daughter he called worthless. He looked up at me. His eyes were cold. Hard flint. The fear was gone, replaced by a deep, simmering loathing. He hated me at that moment. He hated me because I had beaten him. He hated me because I was stronger than him. "You are a cold-hearted bitch," he whispered. "I learned from the best," I replied. He signed. He pressed the pen down so hard he nearly tore the paper. He signed his name, Frank Marlowe, in angry, jagged strokes. He shoved the paper back at me. "Are you happy?" he spat. "I am secure," I said. "There is a difference." I took the paper, I checked the signature, I put it back in the envelope. "Now get out," I said, "and tell Blair that if she does not transfer her car loan into her own name by Friday, I am reporting the vehicle stolen. Since I am the legal owner, I can do that." My father stood up. He loomed over me one last time, trying to cast a shadow. "You think you have won," he said, his voice shaking with malice. "You think a piece of paper protects you. You have no idea what you have just done. You have destroyed this family, and you are going to regret this day for the rest of your life. When you are alone, Adeline, when you have no one, remember that you chose this." "I was already alone, Dad," I said, looking up at him. "I was alone at every dinner. I was alone every time I paid a bill. The only difference is that now, I am alone and rich." He turned and stormed out. He did not wait for Mom. He pushed the glass door open so hard it bounced against the stop. He marched down the street, a man fleeing the scene of his own unraveling. Mom looked at me one last time. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she saw the stone wall in my eyes and thought better of it. She grabbed her purse and hurried after him, a satellite forever trapped in his decaying orbit. I sat there in the silence of the bustling cafe. I watched them go through the glass window. I watched them get into the truck I had paid the insurance on. I watched them argue as they pulled away. I should have felt relieved. I had the signature. I had the confession. I had the legal high ground. But as I watched the truck disappear into the traffic of Port Mason, I felt a strange vibration in the air, a tension. My father's parting words echoed in my mind. "You will regret this." He had signed the paper too easily. He had given up too quickly after the confession. A man like Frank Marlowe does not surrender. He regroups. I looked at the envelope in my hand. It felt heavy. I signaled the waiter for the check. I needed to get this document to my lawyer immediately, because as I sat there, surrounded by the noise of strangers, I realized that while I had won the battle of the bank account, the war for my safety was about to enter its most dangerous phase. The mask had fallen. Yes, but underneath the mask of the successful businessman was not just a fraud, it was something far more vindictive, and I had just backed him into a corner with nothing left to lose. My father left the daily roast thinking he had bought himself time. He thought that by scratching his signature on a piece of paper, he had pacified the hysterical daughter and that by next week, he could manipulate me back into the fold. He thought the settlement agreement was just a temper tantrum in written form, something he could ignore once the dust settled. He was wrong. He forgot that in the world of finance, algorithms do not care about family dynamics. They only care about risk. And I had just flagged the entire Marlowe household as a radioactive asset. The fallout began 48 hours after the meeting. It started with a cascade of automated security measures. Because I had reported the Summit Horizon account as fraudulent and provided the police report to the credit bureaus. The lenders panicked. They did not just freeze that one account. They reviewed the entire credit profile associated with that address. My father's credit cards, which were leveraged to the hilt, were suddenly suspended for security review. The line of credit he used for his consulting business was frozen pending identity verification. The house on Maple Row, usually a fortress of noise and activity, went dark. Not literally, not yet, but the digital hum that kept their lives running, the streaming services, the high-speed data plan, the premium subscriptions was severed. I had transferred the billing responsibility, and because they had ignored the email to accept it, the services simply shut off. I was sitting in my office at Stonewick Compliance Solutions when my lawyer, Elena, called. Her voice was sharp, laced with the kind of excitement attorneys get when they find a smoking gun in a haystack. "Adeline," she said, "I found something in the property records. You need to sit down." "I am sitting, Elena. What is it?" "I was pulling the deed history on your parents' house to prepare the lien if they default on the settlement, and I noticed something interesting. 3 years ago, your father refinanced the mortgage to pull out equity. Do you remember that?" "Vaguely," I said. "He said he was remodeling the kitchen." "Right. Well, to qualify for the better rate, he needed to lower the debt-to-income ratio of the primary borrowers, so he added a co-borrower, and because he added a co-borrower, he had to add them to the title." My heart stopped. "Elena, tell me he did not—" "He did," she said. "Your name is on the deed. Adeline, you are not just a contributor, you are a legal co-owner of the property at 124 Maple Row. You own 50% of that house." I stared at the phone. My father, in his arrogance, had used my creditworthiness to secure a loan, forged my signature to push it through, and in doing so, he had accidentally handed me the keys to his kingdom. He had assumed I would never check. He assumed I was too financially illiterate to understand property law. "What does this mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "It means," Elena said, "that you have the right to force a partition sale. You can force them to sell the house to pay you your share of the equity. You hold the ultimate leverage. They are living in your house, Adeline." A cold, hard smile spread across my face. "Draft the letter," I said. "Tell them I am exercising my right to restructure the asset." The reaction was immediate and nuclear. When the courier delivered the notice of intent to partition sale, my father finally realized the gravity of his mistake. He called me. I did not answer. He texted me. I blocked him. Then, Blair tried to launch her counterattack. She went to social media. She posted a long, tearful video on her story, claiming that her estranged sister was trying to evict their elderly parents out of jealousy and spite. She did not name me, but she gave enough details for anyone in our circle to know who she meant. She painted a picture of a family under siege by a vindictive, money-hungry traitor. "We are being bullied," she cried to the camera, wiping away a tear that looked suspiciously staged. "My sister is trying to take our childhood home because she is bitter about her own life." It might have worked 5 years ago, but I had laid the groundwork. 10 minutes after she posted it, a notification popped up in the comments. It was from Cousin Miller, who had been CC'd on the original invoice email. Miller wrote, "If she is so bitter and broke, why do the receipts show she paid for your Range Rover for 3 years? And isn't she on the deed because she qualified for the mortgage when your dad couldn't?" Then Mrs. Gable, the church lady who had also seen the invoice, commented, "Honesty is a virtue. Blair, we all saw the documents. Perhaps it is time to humble yourselves." The narrative collapsed instantly. Blair deleted the video within the hour. But the damage was done. The community knew. The mask had not just slipped, it had shattered. That evening, I sent my final notice. It was not a request, it was a set of instructions. To Frank and Janine Marlowe, subject termination of financial relationship. As of today, I am initiating the process to remove my name from the mortgage. You have 2 choices. You can refinance the home in your own name and buy me out of my equity share, which amounts to roughly $100,000, or we put the house on the market immediately. Furthermore, regarding the Summit Horizon fraud, I am willing to pause the criminal prosecution on one condition. You will sign a notarized admission of guilt that I can keep in my safe. If you ever contact me again, if you ever ask for $1, or if you ever disparage my name, I will hand that admission to the district attorney. This is the end. Figure it out. My father showed up at my office building the next morning. He did not scream this time. He looked defeated. His polo shirt was wrinkled. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 days. I met him in the lobby, with security standing 5 feet away. He held the papers in his hand, the admission of guilt, the agreement to sell the house because, of course, they could not qualify to refinance it on their own. They were going to lose the house, not because I took it, but because they could not afford it without me. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and confusion. "You are destroying us," he said quietly. "You are leaving us with nothing." "I am leaving you with exactly what you earned," I replied. He straightened up, trying to summon one last shred of his old authority. He looked at my suit, my calm demeanor, the security guard standing behind me. "You think you are so smart," he sneered, "but you are still broke. Adeline, you are emotionally bankrupt. You have no family. You have no one. You are worthless." There it was, the word he used to control me, the word he used to keep me small. I looked at him, and I felt absolutely nothing. No pain, no anger, just the clarity of a balance sheet that finally zeroed out. "Dad," I said, my voice steady and loud enough for the receptionist to hear. "Broke is when you have to steal your daughter's identity to pay for a country club membership. Broke is when you need the person you despise just to keep the lights on. I am not broke. I am the bank, and I just closed your account." He stood there, mouth slightly open, the insult dying in his throat. He realized, finally, that the word had no power anymore. He could not define me because he no longer owned me. He signed the papers. He did it on the reception desk, his hand shaking. "I hope you are happy," he muttered as he shoved them toward me. "I am free," I said. "Goodbye, Frank." I did not call him Dad. I turned my back on him and walked toward the elevators. I did not look back to see him leave. I heard the revolving door spin, and then silence. That afternoon, I made one final transfer. I calculated the exact amount I would have spent on their mortgage and utilities for the next 6 months. It was a significant sum, $11,000. I logged into the portal for a local organization called the Open Door Foundation. They provided financial literacy classes and emergency housing for young women trying to escape financial abuse. I typed in the amount. In the dedication field, I wrote, "For the girl who thinks she owes them everything. You do not." I hit send. The screen flashed "Transaction successful." It was the most satisfying purchase of my life. I was not hoarding the money. I was not being greedy. I was redirecting my resources from a black hole to a garden. I was using my money to build a ladder for someone else to climb out of the pit I had just escaped. My mother called one last time that evening. She left a voicemail. She was crying, asking for one more chance to be a family, promising that things would be different, that they would respect me now. I listened to it. I hovered my thumb over the callback button. But then I remembered the "just this once" text. I remembered the dinner where they laughed at my clothes. I remembered the fraud. They did not want me. They wanted the access I provided. They missed the convenience, not the daughter. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked the number. I walked out onto the balcony of my apartment. The city of Port Mason was spread out before me, glittering with lights. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. For the first time in 32 years, I did not owe anyone anything. My credit was locked. My name was clear. My house was silent. But it was a silence I had chosen, not one I had been forced into. I had walked through the fire of guilt and obligation, and I had come out the other side holding the only thing that mattered: my own life. If you are listening to this, and you are the one keeping the lights on for people who make you feel small, ask yourself the question I finally answered. If you stopped paying today, would they still call you tomorrow? If the answer is no, then you are not their family. You are their host, and it is time to serve the eviction notice. Thank you so much for listening to my story on Veronica Revenge Stories. It was a long journey from that dinner table to this balcony, and I am glad I could share the receipt with you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Are you in your car, at your desk, or maybe ignoring a family dinner of your own? Let me know in the comments below what time it is where you are, and if you have ever had to fire your own family. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so this story can reach anyone else who needs to hear that it is okay to close the account. Stay strong and keep your receipts.